Hey there, 7th grade. The 7th grade math team decided to post some videos about chapter 9, just to kind of give you some insight of what we're going to be doing when we get back. So no pressure, just kind of they're here so that way you can see what we're going to do. So 9.1 is making predictions with circle graphs. You've seen circle graphs before. Remember that they are part to whole or part to part. Each portion of the circle represents a percentage of 100. Remember that the entire circle has a sum of 100%. That means each part equals 100%. So let's look at some questions. Use the information below to complete the table and answer the questions and fill in the circle graph. So if we have a table of, say, right here, the extracurricular activities and the number of students, the first thing we would have to do is add up the number of students. So we would need to get our total. Once we got our total, you would see that is 50. So in order to move on and fill in the circle graph, we would need to see the percentage of students. So remember how you do that. The percentage of students is out of 100. So I saw that 50 is times 2 to get 100%. So now I notice that I could take 16 and multiply by 2, and I would get 32%. So I'm going to do that for the rest of these. I'm going to multiply each of these by 2, and that's how I would get my percent, because that's what I did with my total. And then 4 times 2 is 8%. So all of these times 2 to get your percentages. So the next step, what we could do is fill in our circle graph with our percentages. And so do you notice how they are different sizes? Well, the sizes correspond with the number of percents that it is. So the biggest percentage is sports. So then our sports would have to fall with the biggest portion of the circle graph. So sports is 32%. And then up in the top would be 26%, which is none. And then I would look and see 18% is music. So I'm just filling in my circle graph with the numbers and the names of each of them. So I can go back and look at the questions and answer those about it. And then debate is our last one. Okay, so now that we filled that in, let's look at the questions. So it says, based on the circle graph, how many more students chose student council over debate if 200 people were surveyed? So this is going to be our new total, is 200. So in our first survey, we did 50 students, so now it's 200. So this is our prediction part of it. So if we have student council over debate, what we can do is take our percentages and subtract those first, because it says how many more students. So student council is 16% and debate is 8%. So I'm going to subtract those. I'm going to get 8%. So now I want to see out of 200 students. So 8% of 200 is what I want to see for this new survey. So if I have of, that means to multiply. Remember, if I have 8%, 8% is 0.08 as a decimal. So then that times 200. So I could do it that way, or I could set up a proportion. A percent proportion would be x over 200 equals 8 over 100, because those are my percentages. Or I could take that 8% and multiply it with that decimal version. So 200 times 0.08 would be 0.0016, and then you move that decimal 2 places. 1, 2. So then that would be 16 students would choose student council over debate. That would be your answer there. Okay, so now let's look at B. Explain how the size of each portion of the circle corresponds with the percentage of the students. So if you look at the percents now, no matter what the percent would, or the number of students, you would look to see. So 32% had 16 students. That was the largest number. So the sizes correspond with the numbers. So 32% is the largest, and we can see that because it is the largest number of students is 16. So that would be like number 1, and number 2, you could see that 26 is the second largest. 26% is the second largest with 13 students, and so on, and 8% is half of 16%. So the percentages correspond with the numbers. All right, so let's look at number 2. The student council at North Middle School held an election for student council president. The data was displayed in a circle graph. So it says if 60 students participated in the election, then how many voted for Morris? So this is our total is 60 students. So now let's look at our circle graph. So we have 5%, 20%, 40%, but we don't know our percentage for Morris. So what we're going to have to do is figure out what that percentage. So I have 40 plus 20, which is 60, 65. So then I would take 100% minus 65 to get your total for Morris. So then that total would be 35% for Morris. So you can set up your percent proportion here. Remember your percent proportion is part over whole and percent over 100. So you don't know how many students voted for Morris, but you do know the total equals 35 over 100%. Okay, so you can cross multiply and divide, or you can take 60 is our total in 0.35 to get the number of students. So then that would be 0, that would be 30, x 0, 18. Add those together. So 21, since we moved that decimal over, 21 students voted. That would be our total of students that voted for Morris. And then B, if 60 students participate in the election, so this is still our total, how many more votes did Suarez win over Vox? So we're having how many more, so how many more means I'm going to be subtracting. So this is a subtraction problem. So you can always subtract your percents first and then solve for that number. So I have 40% minus 20%, which is 20%. So then I have 20% of 60. And once again, you can set up your percent proportion, or you can solve with the decimal version. It would look like x over 60 equals 20 over 100. And then here, you could take off that 0. And then C, 2 times 60 would be 120 equals 10x divided by 10, which would be x equals 12 students. So I solved that one with a percent proportion, not the decimal version. So you can use either one to solve. Okay, so let's move on to number 3. Number 3 says the 6th grade students participated in a fitness challenge through their PE class. They chose an activity and committed to exercising that way for 3 weeks in 1 week. So it says there are 250 6th grade students. So 250 is my total. Use the graph to determine how many students participated in lifting weights, running, and playing sports. So if I look here, I'm actually missing lifting weights as a percentage. So I would add those up. So I have 70, 87 plus 5 is 92. So then 92 minus 100% is 8%. So then that would be for lifting weights. Okay, so once again, you can set up the percent proportion or set up using the decimal version. And I'm going to go ahead and use the decimal version. So I have 250 times 0.08 because that is the decimal version of the percent. And I'm going to multiply that. That's 40, 16, 16 plus 4 is 20. Don't forget to move that decimal 2 places, 1, 2. So then that would be 20 students chose lifting weights. So now let's move on to running. So I have 30% of the students chose running. So once again, 250 times 0.30. Don't forget that anything times 0 is 0. So I put my placeholder there. And then go ahead and move on to that 3, which is 15, 6, 7. And then you have 2 decimal places, 1, 2. So that would be 75 students chose running. And the last one here is playing sports. So I have 40% of 250 chose playing sports. So 250 times 40% or 0.40. So again, I have a 0. So I have a placeholder, 0, 20, 8, 9, 10. And 2 decimal places. Let's see, I did that something. 0, 0, 0, 1. Sorry about that. I didn't do enough zeros there. So 1, 2, 1, 2. There you go. And that would be 100 students. Okay, so then let's look at B here. It says Joseph says that the number of students who chose swimming, walking, and lifting weights is greater than the number who chose running. Explain why you agree or disagree with Joseph. So for swimming, let me get a pen. So swimming is 5%, walking is 17%, and lifting weights is 8%. Now running is 30%. So let's see if those 3 combined together is greater than the number of running. So then I would have 5 plus 17 plus 8, which is 30%. Now, if it says greater than, that means that those 3 actually have to be greater, but I would disagree here because they're actually equal. So because they are equal, those 3 are not greater than. So they are equal than that, okay? So hopefully those notes made sense. We will be going back over those when we get back to school, but I know we'll be moving pretty quick, so I wanted to go ahead and move on to a couple more questions, or maybe just one here, so that way you can answer any quizzes if when we post those as well. So this one says the circle graph below shows the favorite hobbies of students at Euless Junior High. It says based on the information in the graph, if there are 1,100 students at Euless Junior High, how many students would select reading or traveling as their favorite hobby? Because it says reading or traveling, we're going to actually add those together. And so reading and traveling, reading is 12%, and traveling is 18%. So when I add those together, that's going to be 30%. So that's 30% of 1,100. You can use the decimal version or you could use the percent proportion. I'm a fan of the decimal version. So remember, you can do either way. So then that's 0, 0, 3, 3, and you move that decimal 2 places, 1, 2. So then that would be 330 students chose those 2 together. Remember, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact one of your 7th grade math teachers. You have Miss Driesner, Miss Langwell, Miss Root, myself, Miss Menegay, or Coach Patterson. Remember, we're here for you. We miss y'all. We hope that you have a good and safe extended spring break and that you're staying healthy. Thank you.